there, metal and heavy music fans. This is Chris with Metal Trenches, and it's time for another episode of Trench Talk. Today I'm talking to Pennsylvania-based metalcore post-hardcore band Ascent Like Wolves. Their new album, Mystic Auras, is out this Friday, February 19th on We Are Triumphant. On this album, they've embraced even more melody than before, incorporating a lot more singing and softer guitar parts that really bring some more atmosphere into the mix. It's a different direction for them, but it's one that I think fans of the genre will enjoy. I had the chance to speak to Al Boltz, who's one of the two vocalists in the band, and I hope you enjoy the episode. This is Chris with Metal Trenches. Today I'm talking to Al from Ascent Like Wolves. Their new album, Mystic Auras, is out February 19th on We Are Triumphant. So Al, thanks for taking the time to chat today. Can you just introduce yourself real quick and introduce the band as well to those who may not have heard it before?
Thank you, Chris. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me. So I do vocals in a band, Ascent Like Wolves, and we have been a band for actually a long time, about almost 11 years in May, I think. So still going strong, but we have been more so putting out consecutive releases at the tail end of the past decade. We actually first signed to We Are Triumphant with our album Frigid Future. So this is actually our last contract album with We Are Triumphant as well, and it's called Mystic Auras. And honestly, it's probably one of my favorite albums that we've done, if not the favorite. And yeah, we're really excited about it and super stoked to see what everybody thinks of the new material.
Yeah, so when did work on that start? I know that the promotional material that I saw mentioned that you went to the studio in October of 2019, and then obviously COVID kind of shut the world down. How long did it take to do everything?
This is probably like the longest piece of art, I guess, that we've worked on in general. I'd say we've been stockpiling some of these songs since 2016, I believe.
Oh, wow.
At least Telephone, I remember, was the song that we had worked on back in 2016, and we were saving it for Spirit Vessel, but we felt that it didn't really sort of fit the vibe of that EP because we wanted to go a little heavier for that one specifically. So we knew it was going to be a cool song and would fit more like a LP that we kind of were planning around too. So that one didn't quite make the cut for Spirit Vessel, but it wasn't really like intended for that release anyway. We had a tour overseas in Asia in the spring of 2018. When we came back, you know, our band has been around for a while, even then, about like 8 years. So we kind of just took like a mild break and played some one-off shows here and there. And then we sort of started just writing for Mystic Auras, I'd say like the summer or the fall of 2018. So we officially entered the studio about, it's kind of weird because we've never actually done block segments before, but for this release we did. We went in a few days in January, February, March, and April. The studio is somewhat close by to us. We usually go to producers Carson, Slovak, and Grant Mcfarland, and they're from Lancaster as well. So that definitely helps for us. I know if anybody's a fan of ABR or ERRA or like Moss to Flames, they just did all their records recently. Well, the new ERRA that's coming out, at least. So we recorded here and there early half of 2019, and then I'd say in mid-October, we went back and did about like 10 days and we finished the rest of the record. But it wasn't quite done in my opinion. I sort of felt unhappy with how it turned out and that we needed more time. So I convinced the band to go back in for at least another day during COVID of last year in July. And we recorded the interlude Midnight Eyes and did some other vocal touch-ups and added some like effect risers and keyboards and songs and stuff of that nature to the songs. And I feel like the album is a much better product now, and it was a good thing that we waited.
Yeah, so it sounds like instead of just sitting on it for a while, you really tried to use the additional time to your benefit because obviously you couldn't do tours or things like that. So that's awesome that you were able to kind of be able to get back in the studio considering all the lockdowns and then, things not being open for a while.
Yeah, it was just kind of weird because, something like this has never really happened before, like on a global scale like this. So we wanted to sit on the record for a while, and I feel like in some way we did because we originally wanted to release it sometime last year. But you know how it is, like these things just kind of take time. Like a scent like Wolves now is kind of just like a giant like Gundam robot, if you will. Like we move sort of slowly, and like for these like bigger projects like this, they're like somewhat business oriented too. So it's kind of difficult, especially in a time like this, to kind of plan out all the moves accurately and just kind of take a second to breathe and know what we're doing. Essentially, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, it makes it a good time to be a music fan though, because I feel like we're going to see so many more releases by the end of this year, especially if like limited touring becomes a possibility. There's probably so much music that bigger labels are just sitting on right now.
yeah, I'm glad that you said that too, because that's kind of how we felt. We were like, oh well, do we really want to put this out and not be able to tour on it right away? And then we were just like, well, everybody's at home in their house and just paying attention to their phone right now, so they really have nothing else to do but listen to music. And at the end of the day, that's all we really want, anyways, for people to listen to the album that we spent so much time on. So
Yep, so you already mentioned the studio Atrium Audio, and you guys have obviously, that's a very familiar kind of approach for you. Why have you wanted to stick with Carson Slovak and Grant Mcfarland for so long? What do you feel they bring out in your music that's been a positive for the band?
well, I feel like they've just kind of been our formula at this point, and like I feel like sometimes it's kind of dangerous for bands to fall into. Just like if bands consecutively put out the same release every time, like the same sounding work. But I don't think it is really that case with us and them. We always try to go in with like a different approach of how we are creating these songs, and we sort of have an idea of how we want them to sound, and they pick up on it too. They know exactly like what we're going for every time. And we kind of like show them examples and show them what we're trying to do in our songs too. Another thing about that is we write our own music. I'd say we bring like 90% of the product already to the studio there anyway. So they kind of just like help make it even more, like amazing. You know what I mean? They put their like polishing touch on it. I feel like I have become a better vocalist because of working with Grant Mcfarland in general. He's what I've been saying. He's like my master sensei. That's what I've been saying to people, because at the end of the day, we still learn a lot from these guys, and they kind of bring out the best in us, and like we just always have good times with them, and they definitely bring like a really nice vibe to the band as well. When the instrument guys are recording, we're actually recording with Grant on vocals at the same time, and just using the pre-pros that we brought to the studio. So it's kind of like we're getting twice the amount of work done at the same time. But yeah, I don't know. We just have a good time, and I think they really understand like any sort of direction that we want to go in. Yeah, we've been working with them, I think, for almost 10 years coming up in this July.
Wow, that's cool. No, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with sticking with the same kind of recording studio and production staff. I know that kind of gets a bad rap sometimes, but I've always had the opinion that if someone really understands a particular genre or, what bands are trying to do with that, why not work with them? 'Cause there's a reason that they're so popular.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, ABR has been working with Carson and Grant, I think, since 2014, like sometime after Leveler. Like the albums they've been putting out are phenomenal. Like that Guardians album was really cool. It's probably one of my favorite ABR records, actually.
Yeah, they've definitely come back in a big way. Like they never went away, but I can appreciate that even this far out, they're still like at the top of their game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's cool because they're like sort of from the same area too, so we can kind of like relate to them in that aspect. It's nice to have a bunch of good dudes with like an amazing studio nearby home, and instead of us having to fly out somewhere and kind of just be away for like a month at a time or something.
Yeah, I'm sure that makes it a little less stressful. You don't feel like you have to maximize every single thing, like you're here for this period of time and you have to get it done then. It's a little bit more flexible, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so. I think the band definitely performs best like under pressure in that sense, but it is definitely a lot better to just be, like we can actually drive there ourselves like every day, like individually and whatnot. So we're kind of just like on our own agenda at the same time too.
Yeah, so going back to what you said about kind of how you feel you've improved your vocals over the years and that's been brought out in the studio, did that kind of shape some of the approach that was taken on Mystic Auras? Because you guys have really gone for even more melodies, I'd say more singing in general, kind of than I've heard in your previous stuff. That was always a factor, but it feels like it's really a focus this time around.
Yeah, it's actually a good question. Yeah, it's just been kind of like a natural evolution, I feel like. And I know that some bands like, like they like to play the pop game after like a couple of albums or something like that. But I mean, most of our previous stuff, I'd say like End of Story Goes was kind of more like a straight up metalcore album for its time. I think we recorded it in 2012, but Frigid Future was a little more technical for us in a sense, and we still kind of contributed those metalcore factors to the vocals in a sense of like, oh, we're gonna scream over this verse and sing over this chorus type thing. But yeah, it's really weird. I think when we started making Spirit Vessel, we were getting a little more experimental vocals too. And the other vocalist in the band is his name is Nick. He's actually my real life brother. So
I did want to ask you about
he's
that after this.
no, that's fine. Yeah, but he has been doing a lot more cleans lately, and it's really easy kind of working with him too because we are brothers and just kind of going for like the same melody or idea is really cool. And he's been improving his clean singing a lot lately as well. So he started branching out a little bit more, doing that on Spirit Vessel. But for Mystic Auras, I think kind of our goal was to have him do a lot more clean singing. And this is the first release where he's actually done clean vocals on it as well. And we've been flip flopping parts too. Like he'll even sing a chorus on, say, Eastern Lights, and I've been screaming the verses or singing some parts of the verse of the bridge of the songs. Yeah, there's a couple of songs like that where he's been just straight up doing the chorus and I'll sing the verses, which is weird because we never done that before, but it's also cool at the same time because we have that ability to flip flop and just make it work. Yeah, I don't know. His voice definitely brings a bigger element to the band that way now than it has previously.
Yeah, and I think it really turned out really well. Like I like the final result myself, and I
Thank
think
you.
for you guys, it makes sense that it took time to get to this point because I feel like some bands in metalcore and even like post-hardcore, like you said, they try to chase the pop route and they don't always have the singing capability to do it. They just try to do it
Right,
and
yeah.
it's like, oh, that doesn't sound anywhere near as good as the screaming, but it's really good balance the way that you guys do it. And for me, it's nostalgic and without feeling dated, kind of a little bit more like nostalgic. It reminds me of listening to like Under Oath and Census Fail and things like that, but it's still got that kind of modern edge to it.
Oh yeah. Good bands.
So with you and Nick contributing in the way that you do and switching off, how do you write lyrics together and kind of trade off or do individually? How do you kind of structure that?
Yeah, we kind of just we actually do both. I would say, like for instance, Bloom and Poison, we wrote together almost in the same room. Like it's really weird. Sometimes we'll come up with the melodies in the rooms together, or one of us will have an idea at some point, whether it's like working at our job or like driving or something. Like we'll come up with a melody, or like I'll just kind of record it on my phone quick in my voice notes, so I remember it for later. But we definitely, Jeff and Blake have been providing the instrumentals to us, and then we sing over them. We're pretty much at a point now where we're just vocalists like in this band, and the guitar playing is like over our heads. Like we can't play guitar like that ourselves and kind of create the melodies like that way or anything. But yeah, those two songs we wrote together. I remember along with Aquamarine, and yeah, they turned out awesome. Like there's no really kind of feud with between us in general. If we don't like a part, we'll just be like, "Yo, that part sucks," and then we'll just kind of like think of some other options to replace it. And then, the other on the other side of the spectrum, we have been just doing stuff ourselves and writing and just kind of bringing it to the table. That's what happened with Dissolve. I don't even think Nick is on that track. It's just me and Booka from Make Them Suffer, which was cool because since he's in the band, like I don't really get to do that all the time. Just kind of one off type songs working completely by myself. In that sense, I'll write a part for a song and then show it to him, and then he like shows me his parts like in the songs, and we kind of go from there. So
It adds
yeah,
some pressure for you.
Yeah, yeah. Death Effect was his song actually, and we kind of saved those two for last because we knew that they were kind of like our own individual songs that we were going to write to. Because I felt like we had the idea for Dissolve first, and I think Death Effect was actually one of the last songs we sort of wrote for the album. So I just told Nick like, "Oh man, you should have your own song too if I'm getting mine." I am on his song, but there's just some backup sort of lines I have with him, and I scream the bridge portion of it. But other than that, that's like pretty much all him that he sort of came up with himself and the melodies and stuff. So yeah, it's just like pretty interesting to kind of write with somebody else, especially your brother, in a sense. But I guess it's better that we're related than not related because I feel like maybe dual vocal bands could argue over that stuff sometimes, you know.
Yeah, that was going to be my other question. Do you feel like it brings a different energy or kind of a different bond that you would have if the other vocalist was not related to you? Or do you think the band having been around for this long, it wouldn't matter by this point?
I don't know. I mean, that's definitely a good question because it's just something I feel like you can't control, and people change over time. So there's that element too. It's like, oh, will this dude, be the same 5 or 10 years from now, or like how he writes, or like if he even wants to contribute to this sort of thing. And we've been together pretty much like our whole lives, and in that aspect of like music and stuff. And we sort of grew up together in England before moving to America. And I think that's kind of like what shaped our bond really is that, like every time we've like moved back and forth between like the States or England, we haven't really like had like friends, you know what I mean? So, I mean, we are best friends, so that's pretty cool that we get to be in a band together too. And at first, I don't think he actually wasn't in the band when we recorded "And the Story Goes" at that time. The first couple of years of the band, Nick didn't replace anybody, but he was added in, I'd say like mid 2012.
You just kind of
But
brought him in naturally.
yeah, just naturally because he was helping us with our merch and stuff like that. Like I think he was even at one point like putting his money into the merch and whatnot too. Yeah, I don't think that we really knew that he could do vocals like that at first. I just remember that there was for some reason there was a show that I could not play, and it's the only show in the band's history I couldn't play. Was with It was a show at the Reverb in Reading with Vista the Apocalypse, and he filled in for me there, and I was told like he killed it. So while we were in the studio making "And the Story Goes," he did a couple of screaming lines for the song "Game Changer," and they sounded really good. And we just unfortunately recorded all the screams right before then,
Oh, so you
and we
just
were
missed
just
it.
like, yeah, like we just missed it. We just missed it, and it would have cost too much money to go back in for another couple of days and do them all too. So we later in 2019 we reissued "And the Story Goes" with his vocals on it. So part of those Mystic Aura sessions actually were vocal sessions to put out that reissue for "And the Story Goes." So it's kind of cool hearing his voice on it now than he wasn't before, but he honestly should have been. So he like just missed the cut of like joining the band for that period of time.
Yeah, and I think it's great you guys did that. It really gives it a very different flair to anybody that's heard the original. Like it kind of reimagines it to an extent.
Yeah, it's kind of like the only way I see it too. I think we took that one down online a long time ago because of the change in the band like that. So to kind of like re-add that element, but with his voice on it, is cool that it's still it like is like actually in our discography. Yeah, it's just I feel like it was always the way that it should have been, and maybe we should have actually have just done that, like went back into the studio. But time is always of the essence and money, and I don't think that we were a signed band back then either, so it's not like we were getting any help that way.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So you've already brought up one of the guests that make an appearance on the album. You've got kind of like almost a who's who of vocalists of the current kind of metalcore, hardcore scene, I feel like. How did you kind of put these guest parts together, and did you write the lyrics for them? Did they kind of write it based on the concept, and how did that work?
Yeah, honestly, man, it was really fun to kind of do this. It's been an idea that I had for a while to get a lot of vocalists from other bands, like especially bands that we look up to and want to tour with slash potentially could in the future. That's kind of just like what happened with Mystic Auras. The album is more or less about what drives people's desires in general. And if you look at the cover, I kind of drew a sketch like that, and I sent it to our artist Corey Swope, and he's actually done all of our previous album covers too. And to me, the cover is just sort of like an ominous aura, like as if it were to say, what to follow, like what are you following in life, essentially. So I remember before going into the album, I saved away quite a bit of cash for this. That was kind of like an idea I just had originally for the album, was to get people from all corners of the world. Booka's from Australia, JT's from Alabama, Matteo's from France, and originally we were supposed to get Ken from Crossfaith. We just had to turn our record in like too soon, I guess. Like we just didn't have enough time for him to do it because he told me he could get it done like the following month, and
Maybe by the next
yeah, we
one.
did. Yeah. I mean, that's actually something we've already talked about. And like I think I talked to him like a month or two ago or something about that. So yeah, hopefully we can do that in the future. But so we got Brian from Currents instead because Blake and I have been hanging out with Currents a lot when they come around at their shows. I think I just like texted him or something. Once we found out Ken's timeline from Crossfaith, Brian was like, "Yeah, I could probably do that like this Friday," which was like 2 days away. So he tracked all of his vocals and gave us all his lyrics, and we worked out the part in like 2 to 3 days time. So that was pretty cool, and he kills his part. So it definitely made us happy, and all these other guest vocals too just kind of came about organically. I don't think at first we didn't really have a plan for anybody. JT, we have kind of like we were like kind of acquaintances, I guess you can say, because I think Texas in July recorded at Atrium Audio as well, and I was interning there, so I've seen him around at shows here and there. He's actually from Maryland originally, but yeah, I think we actually had Grant Mcfarland hit him up about this song, and he was totally into it. And yeah, like since then we've been pretty like good friends and whatnot. So he killed his part too. It's probably like one of my favorite It's Not Like Wolf songs, Bloom. ERRA just recorded at Atrium Audio as well. And while they had an off day, he actually came down to Philly and filmed his part for the music video for Bloom. And he told me that was the first time he's ever done that for a band that wasn't one of his own bands. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's super
just to
cool.
kind of hear. Yeah, I was like, dude, like that's awesome. Thank you so much. I think he just really liked the song, and that's definitely good to hear. Just as like a band that are getting these types of features, because we're not really like as big of a band as those bands are that we have for the features. We still do look up to them, and I think all their music's amazing too. Mattéo from Novelists, we played a show with them. I think it was in Philly about 2 or 3 years ago, something like that. And he was sick on tour, so I brought him a bunch of medicine from like Target or something like that. And he was like super stoked on it because I think that was their first US tour and they didn't really know that many people over here.
And you're instant
Um,
friends.
yeah, so yeah, essentially like we were homies now. And yeah, we talk all the time. Like I have him on Nintendo Switch and stuff like that, which is cool. But I think his part is super interesting in any album in itself. Like the breakdown is just huge. And his lyrics are really interesting too. Your question about the lyrics, I feel like when you ask artists to sing a part that you wrote, like if I was giving somebody else like a part on the album, and I'd be like, here you go, here's the lyrics. Like I feel like they probably don't like that as much, and they wouldn't be as into it and produce like as a good product. So I always just kind of tell them like what the songs are about, and then like just do whatever they want to as far as melody, and just kind of trust them because I think it's cool to see what they come up with as well. And at the end of the day, it definitely makes like for a better product in itself. And I think I think you can really hear that in these songs too. Like nothing was forced or anything like that. So that's good. The last, actually, the third vocal I think that we got was Booka, and I just kind of saw her post something on Instagram about guest vocals. But Blake and I, after we recorded Dissolve, it was actually originally recorded with just all my vocals on it. And we were just kind of joking about in the studio how we should just get Booka on the track. And then we actually did. So it worked out, which is funny.
Yeah, it's great that it seems like everybody you reached out to, except for Crossfaith, were able to do it, and that I think that's a perfect approach to kind of give them a baseline idea because that's what stood out to me is that even though obviously all of the promotional material that I got, for reviewing or interviewing kind of mentions the guest as a focus, it doesn't feel like it stands out. It feels very natural and fits within you. Like you wouldn't even know. Obviously, you can tell they're different pitches, but you wouldn't know they're specifically guests. Because I can think of albums I've listened to in the past where the guest track is like, okay, this stands out way too much, and you can tell it was written only around the guests and feels kind of weird in the context of the album.
Right. Yeah. I've definitely like heard songs like that before where I'm just like, this doesn't really fit. But I think, one of the reasons why we selected these guest vocalists too is because, obviously like we're friends with them, but they make really good music too. And that's, to me, that's the thing that matters the most. And I think maybe part of the reason why it sounds good is just because it sort of happened organically. Like we weren't like bugging people to kind of like do this type of thing for us or anything. And I'm honestly surprised that all of them said yes, to be real with you, because our band's not like, we're not like famous rock stars or anything crazy of that nature. So
I think
yeah,
it's
it's
just
just really cool to hear like the final product like that with how we sort of envisioned it.
Yeah, I think it's just maybe just a testament to that metalcore and post-hardcore are just a really friendly community in general.
Yeah, I think that probably stands true. I don't really know much about the other types of communities that way, but it seems like most people that front these bands vocally are really friendly from my encounters at least.
Yeah, and that's what I found as well. So going back to the album concept, I read through the lyrics and it covers a lot of material. Like it's all kind of stuff that people can relate to. You have like relationships that are falling apart, kind of the mundane nature of working life, substance abuse. But it seemed like there was a consistent narrator almost from beginning to end. And kind of what I felt on Aquamarine was there was almost like a feeling of redemption or rebirth, like getting through all of that and then coming out the other side. Is that kind of an accurate portrayal of the concept and how it flows?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think like if fans or people listen to our previous material, I feel like the song musically sort of ends like a typical West Sent Like Wolves album. Like we kind of like ride out on like those effects or like strings or chimes, like what have you. But yeah, Aquamarine's a protest song, and it's kind of about just kind of life swallowing you up and absorbing you into this. It's just like a fabrication of greed, and that we just have to, like, we work all day for money and that's it, and we kind of get lost in that sense, and we forget about the things that are sort of important to us that exist during the week, like during the work week and stuff, whether it's like family or friends, creative projects and things like you're working on that matter. And I think that sort of, America is kind of like lost in that sense right now. And, it's just the 1% like taking all the money and everybody's just like struggling. And yeah, I guess like at the end of the day, Aquamarine's like our big like fuck you, like, we're just kind of gonna do what we want to and show you how we feel. And I think that's kind of like an accurate representation of Mystic Auras, is that we're not really afraid to show and talk about how we feel on the album. And it's actually more of like our first personal record where we sort of talk about our feelings. And it was sort of a challenge to write with Nick sometimes about these types of topics and subjects, like in our personal lives and stuff like that too. But sometimes it was easy, you know what I mean? It's kind of just at the end of the day, you just take a look at everything and just kind of come together and work things out like that. So I'd say, like especially talking about relationships in that matter, that was definitely hard, but other topics were definitely easier to handle when writing together. So like Bloom, for example, is about how his girlfriend lives in Missouri, and it's kind of like a long distance relationship type of song. I could sort of relate to him at the time and whatnot too, because my girlfriend moved into an apartment without me, and we still kind of like live somewhat like far away, like driving distance and stuff. So yeah, it's just really really personal album and emotional. I'm glad that people can relate to it. At least I hope they do, from what they've heard already. So I've heard good things.
Yeah, it really stood out to me. I think you can really hear the emotion in both your and Nick's performances, and I'm sure that writing about that kind of stuff kind of helped you with, I'd say, dealing with some of it, depending on the certain topics and what they are.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I was definitely going through like a rough point, like when we were doing telephone and stuff. Nick would kind of like bounce ideas off me and like help me like kind of just, I don't know, I was just kind of going through it. Like doing this project, I feel like definitely made me just feel better in general. It was just something to look forward to. And we had a tour somewhat right after the studio time for 3 weeks for And Astorio's reissue type tour. So it was kind of nice and like a breath of fresh air to not have to think about things like that all the time, or just like negative things that have kind of like happened in our lives and stuff, especially mine. But I mean, things are all good now, at least. But yeah, it's kind of like, it's just really weird to write about those things in that time and be super emotional just with music, I guess, in general. But it always makes for a good song. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the happier songs might not translate as well in like, you know, culture, I guess, or like pop culture and things like that. I feel like the sad songs always sort of shine a lot more.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I always think of the example of like Nine Inch Nails, and they're like, once Trent Reznor got happy, the music wasn't good anymore. Which,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people, when people are going through it, they have stuff to talk about, and I feel like the songs are just like they just become better products. And it's funny that you were mentioning like Aquamarine and writing in that sense, because I remember we were really under pressure that day going to record that song. We didn't even have the lyrics done, just because like, I don't know, like some days I would just wake up and just not want to do it at all. That was just kind of like the mental state I was in at the time. So Nick definitely kind of pulled me out from underneath a little bit there. And sometimes you just gotta like wake yourself up from that kind of like reality that you're living in to go do it. But I just remember driving my car and we would just be playing the instrumental in my car, and we'd just be writing the lyrics and making up the melodies for some of the parts then on the way to the studio. And it turned out to be an awesome song too.
yeah,
I think
it's one of my favorites, I think.
yeah, like his chorus part, I don't think was originally like part of the chorus. It was towards the end, but we sort of blended it in there. It just sounded a lot better.
Yeah, no, that's super cool to hear kind of how you guys just did it on the fly like that. I can't think of too many situations I've heard recently of bands doing that and it comes out really well.
That happens a lot with us. At least for like a few things, like studio wise. Like sometimes we'll just like finish like writing it in the studio while we're like on lunch or something like that.
No, that's cool. So I have to ask, I saw that you have a shirt that has Misato from Neon Genesis Evangelion, and so I wanted to
Yeah.
ask about that and if that played any influence into the album at all, given that that whole anime is about, mental illness and kind of going insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's not about Neon Genesis or like any of the songs like that. But the band is, I'd say, like huge fans of anime in general. Speaking of mental illness, I think actually Death Effect Nick wrote in conjunction with the Joker movie that was kind of out at the same time with Joaquin Phoenix,
Oh yeah.
and so that's like kind of what some of the aspects of the song is about. So we didn't pull it from Neon Genesis, but I think the Joker movie, that song was at least. But yeah, we love anime, and Neon Genesis Evangelion is like one of my favorite anime shows of all time. But I'd say right now everybody's really watching Attack on Titan.
Yeah, the final season.
Yeah, it's good. I can't even predict anything in that show anymore. I just let it happen.
No, that's awesome. I always, anytime I see a band have an anime kind of tie-in of some kind, I'm just like, oh, gotta hone in on that.
Well, then you'd love this band called Fight Star. They have an album called Grand Unification, and it is actually all about Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. I remember
Yeah.
hearing that at some point, and there's just so much music that I write about stuff every week, so stuff stands
Right.
out, and then it's hard to remember sometimes.
Yeah, that's like one of our, I think, biggest influences vocally actually is Charlie Simpson from Fight Star. Like that band is just like incredible, man. I don't think that they can write a bad song. Like they just don't know how to write a bad song. So growing up in England, those bands like Funeral for a Friend and Fight Star and Enter Shikari, I think, kind of more or less played a bigger influence on our musical career than most of these American bands at that time, like Disturbed, Betrayal, Avenged Sevenfold. Like I remember when we moved back to the States, like our friends would like talk about that kind of stuff, and we'd be like, "What? Like who? Like you know what I mean?" Like we just weren't really familiar with that kind of like American quote unquote like metal or post hardcore at the time.
Yeah, and some of those bands I don't feel like broke out in the States until much later. Like Enter Shikari, I remember hearing, I think probably not until like Common Dreads. I feel like it took a little bit for them to start to make a bigger name for themselves over here.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like over here they blew up with that Flash Flood in Color album. I sort of remember seeing them like everywhere then when that was out, which is a great album too. I love that album.
Yeah, no, it's always fun to talk different influences because you see a band from a certain location, but you don't know the background of the members, so you're always curious kind of what plays into it. And it's cool that the British angle really kind of ties in for you guys because that's not what I would have expected necessarily.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because Shane Told from Silverstein, I was just talking to him on his show, I think a couple days ago, and he sort of said that he was like, "Why don't you have the accent?" I was like, "I don't know, I lost it." That's just kind of what happens. But Nick never actually he never absorbed it in general. We moved over there at a younger age, I'd say like 6 or 7, and we moved back sometime in high school. But I had the accent, he didn't, and I guess I've just been somewhat Americanized since like not too long after I moved back here.
Does it come back when you go back to England at all?
I actually haven't been back since then, but I do have tickets to see Funeral for a Friend in April in London there, and I hope that happens, but I definitely doubt that it will. Given the nature of the world right now and everything that's going on. But I would love to go back at some point and Yeah, like those two bands actually, Fight Star and Funeral for a Friend, are my two favorite bands of all time, and I've never actually seen them live yet. So I'm really trying to do that. COVID's preventing me from doing that.
Yeah, maybe when the world reopens. It's hard to tell when that's gonna happen though.
Yeah, I would say like my assumption would be next year.
Yeah, do you see anything happening locally? Maybe because my kind of bingo card, if you will, is that there might be. I'm near Baltimore and DC, so I could see
Oh,
local
okay.
local bands kind of maybe doing some small scale shows by like the fall, but I feel like no one's gonna want to tour nationally or internationally until definitely next year.
Yeah, I think that's probably like the safest bet because we had some shows planned for last year, like overseas and stuff too, and it's kind of just hard to tell right now. And hopefully, like agencies like Live Nation have a plan for this type of thing. Because I feel like nothing's been sort of reassured online anywhere, or there's been like any real type of information on this stuff. It just seems like these festivals or shows or what have you, just they're kind of like there, but like they don't really seem to be promoting them that much. I think because of that, they're just kind of trying to block in the dates, and then they're probably just gonna be like, "Oh yeah, guys, we canceled this. This it's on next year now," type thing. So yeah, I would say that the smartest move would be 2022 for sure.
Yeah, which is I still think that's tough, but it makes sense to be realistic because it's frustrating. I'm coming up on a year since I've been to a show because the last one I went to was February 29th of last year, but I also don't want to, get sick having had COVID in October, get it again,
Oh,
spread
on
it.
Leap Day, went to a show on Leap Day.
Yep.
Oh, you had COVID too.
Yeah, thankfully very mild, no lingering after effects, but with all the different things they say you can get it again, there's different strains. I'm like, shows don't seem priority for the moment.
Yeah, that's true. My girlfriend actually got COVID around like the same time, and I was fine. But although I've been to Wuhan, China twice, so the band was probably patient zero or something for this whole thing. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like we're just kind of sitting in like space right now, essentially, just kind of watching everything
Yeah.
unfold, and
Are
yeah,
you
hopefully
guys
things
still all
return to
close?
normal.
Could you do like a live stream or something? Or is that something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, we actually wanted to do a live stream for this release sometime. I think like last month we wanted to record it, but we we had a member leave actually about a month ago, so it just kind of like has complicated things. We hope to at least do something like that in the first half of this year. I think that would be really cool if we could just do some sort of live streaming event. But yeah, I mean, we haven't really relearned these new songs though either. So that's also the challenge because we recorded them a while ago, and this COVID thing kind of happened almost immediately after that. You know what I mean, like four
Yeah,
months
yeah.
later. So for us to just like we were sitting on this for a while, we're just honestly glad that it's coming out, and now I can't even believe that it is. To be honest with you, I'm so happy about it.
Yeah, what does that mean for band practices? Is it kind of impossible at times, or what has the cadence been during 2020? I mean, obviously, like you said, you were able to go to the studio, but how often are you guys able to practice or kind of do anything now?
I'd say like last year we were kind of just practicing like every now and again, like once a month or something like that, just because like we didn't really know what was going on essentially. But we can sort of get together and practice whenever we want to. I think everybody sort of lives like an hour away from each other right now. So like Blake lives in Philly, and I live in Lancaster, and Nick's sort of close by as well. Jeff lives in Lancaster too, and Cody sort of lives probably like about an hour north away from me. So we're a little spread out, but we have like a practice space too. And I don't know, there's just hasn't been really like a calling for it right now, and we don't have any like tours set in stone to kind of rehearse for or anything. So I think actually what the plan might be is to make more music for another type of release or single.
Yeah, maybe like another EP or something, if it kind of comes out to that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping. We can do like another EP and put it out sometime like next year, being that everything kind of like goes well, and we actually write music, so we'll write things that we like. But yeah, I would love to do that honestly, because we already recorded that one like almost 2 years ago now. So to get back in the studio would be so sick.
Yeah, I feel like every band is definitely doing that right now. It seems like for every tour that gets canceled, you get another EP or album out of it. And as much
Yeah,
as it sucks for live shows, it makes me happy to be able to consume all of that and just kind of get absorbed in it, have something that takes my mind off kind of the day-to-day of working from home, things like that.
gotcha. Same.
Well, I want to thank you for the interview, and I just wanted to see if there's anything else you wanted to say about Mystic Auras or just the band in general.
Oh, thank you for having me, man. It's been a lot of fun. Like we've been working on Mystic Auras for a long time now, it seems, and like I just said, like a couple of minutes ago, I'm surprised that it's even coming out, and I'm really happy about that too, and I think everybody else is. So, if you're listening to this, thank you for listening. Go check out Mystic Auras next Friday, February 19th. I think that you will like it if you like our previous material, and you might be surprised by some of the cards we pull out in it. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Al.